Alright, Travis Wayne Goodsoul. I did the last two videos that are the same video with different titles, specifically designed to see if there's a difference. If I can draw Mormons in to the specifically worded light and truth of the Gospel of Mormonism versus those of you who are my regulars, who are likely to go and pick the one about secret words and signs exposed. They're both even last I saw, but it's Thanksgiving. What's interesting is that the Light and Truth one, I used the picture of President Nelson at the Rome dedication, where he's taken a photo with the statue of Peter, and Peter's holding keys, and Nelson is trying to take them away from Peter. Well, Mormons all know that, oh yeah, Nelson has the right to rule the church because of Joseph Smith getting the keys from Peter, James, and John. And as I've been trying to go over with you guys about church history that everybody's getting wrong, even church historians and critic historians, is that Joseph's organization is not the same as today. It's completely different. And so after Joseph Smith was assassinated by the orders of Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball, two peas in a pod that need to be squished between the mattress sheets of, is it Rapunzel? No, that's the long hair one. I don't think she was on the bed where a pea had to be placed in some, I can't remember that fairy tale anymore. But anyway, Brigham created his own organization of pure Luciferianism, changing the temple, incorporating the Scottish Rites Freemasons with blood oaths, penalties of suicide pacts, and nudity, and polygamy, and sex trafficking, because sex trafficking involves taking women from one state to another state, or one country to another country. And that's exactly what Brigham Young did, guys. Polygamy was against the law, yet Brigham Young had all these women sealed to him, and Joseph, who is dead, and Heber C. Kimball, with the promise of taking care of the women. And so if you don't understand, women did not have freedoms and liberties that we have today. And so those women were extorted into going with Brigham if they wanted to live. Otherwise, they'd have to take their chances, as Emma Smith and Lucy Mack seem to have done okay. Emma did get remarried, though. Didn't last too long, but she did eventually get a man to take care of her. And so that may have been a big part of why she was able to survive. And yes, those days were sexist. Those days were abusive to women. But we can't condemn them. They're all dead. And we can't block it out of history just because we disapprove of the actions. We have to acknowledge it, call it for what it is, and recognized that Joseph Smith wanted to do reversals of cultural abuses. He gave women the priesthood in 1842, but the Brighamite Church has since denounced that, saying, oh no, they were giving prayers by the laying on of hands to the oxen and whatever else. No, they were given priesthood. Emma Smith was the leader of the women. And Relief Society president, whatever. She was the leader of women in the church. The president of the women of the church. And people don't understand that position that she held because of Brigham Young making all the changes that he did, reversing the treatment of women back to slavery and prostitution and sex trafficking and all that. Joseph Smith was also an abolitionist, and Brigham Young reversed that. As Joseph Smith's presidential platform indicated, he intended to abolish slavery, and Brigham Young did away with that and went beyond and took away further priesthood, allowing those who had it to be grandfathered out. And so, yeah, Joseph Smith gave blacks priesthood, but it was Brigham Young who denied them entrance into the temple if they followed him into the desert in violation of Matthew 24. And so when Joseph has John the Baptist, and they record that, I am John the Baptist, I'm here to give you the key of baptism. And so Joseph gets the key of baptism. And then we don't have a record of it, we just have a reference to it of Peter, James, and John. And because the kingdom of God is mentioned with Peter, James, and John, and because Brigham Young had chased out Thomas B. Marsh as the president to become the exalted president of the missionary 12, similar to the 12 apostles in the New Testament, but it's not the same today. Again, Brigham Young changed it specifically to cover it all up of what he did. And then Mormons are in denial because they only see today, and they trust the leaders that they are inspired by God. Nelson told us on Friday he received his video message, revelation from heaven. It refers to heaven in his behind the scenes post on the church website. And of course he denied coronavirus, and that all we needed to do was be grateful and all our problems will be solved, including coronavirus. Since the fasts, the 2 fasts that he held didn't work. And so we've been led to believe that that is it. That Peter, James, and John gave him, Joseph Smith, the keys of the kingdom to organize the church. And we, as Mormons, are taught to stop there. That's it. Peter, James, and John, we now rule the church. We have authority to govern, as Oakes constantly reminds Mormons. We have the keys, that means we're allowed to lead. Never mind prophet, seer, revelator, and translator, which is purposely dropped since Brigham Young. But there's another part that has to do with what Mormons have been led away from. And that has to do with the Kirtland Temple experience during Passover. There may be some CES teachers who informed us, oh, it was during Passover of the Jews. No, it's Passover of the house of Israel, which we, in our patriarchal blessings, are assigned to the house of Israel. Passover's for us too, but only the Jews celebrate it. And that time in the temple, Joseph Smith records that he got a visit from Elias, Moses, and Elijah. And because they don't understand about Passover, they don't understand what that means. For Elijah, we assume, oh, that's for genealogy work, doing the work for the dead in the temple. Not according to the Jews. There's a difference. But then there's Moses, and it's for the gathering. Oh, it's missionary work. That's how the church interprets that. The gathering of the elect from the four quarters of the earth. Missionary work. So Peter, James, and John were bigger than Moses. I think the Jews also have something to say about that too. The Book of Mormon tells us we are supposed to be after the learning of the pre-captivity Jews, which means the house of Israel. Before 600 BCE, which technically was 597, when Babylon first conquered Jerusalem and put Zedekiah on the throne as the puppet king to make sure that Babylon receives tribute. He sort of blew it, and Babylon came back 11 years later and destroyed Jerusalem and took captives prisoner. And so Mormons don't understand, and the reason why is because of the pure evil of Brigham Young, taking the church in a completely different path. His Danites, loyalists, still called him the modern day Moses, or the Mormon Moses. They knew the title. And so what happened? How did the current church totally diss on Moses and go back to Peter? It has to do with the Edmunds-Tucker Act, and then eventually the church in 1923 reincorporating Brigham's church. But wanting to cover up all that Brigham Young did, it was necessary to take the church into a new direction, yet still maintain the Book of Mormon, the First Vision, which was only thanks to Richards, who was the president of the mission in Liverpool, England, with the Beatles. But I think without him deciding to go live with the Brighamites, Ross. All right, I'll come back. All right, I got Russ taken care of now. So since I don't remember where I left off, we'll just get right into it. So, Russell M. Nelson, posing with the keys of Peter, believes that Peter was the leader of the church and therefore had the authority to run the church. Even though Peter did not replace Jesus. He remained among the 12 apostles, but everybody, even the Catholic Church, assumes that authority was passed from Jesus to the ministering 12 apostles. And this is what real history tells us, is that the 12 apostles that we read were actually therapeutae. The therapeutae, healers for therapeutics, who were in each city of therapeutae organization. And so in each city, as you read, there's Jerusalem, there's Alexandria, Egypt, there's the 4 or 5 up in Turkey, and others. All of them had 12 apostles. And what they did was minister. And they went around to the other churches to preach. And so that's what we have with Acts, is them preaching. Now the claim that the Bible is making is that among these therapeutae there is only one that mattered, just like there's only one Messiah who mattered. And so when the Dead Sea Scrolls came out, the Qumran, they had their therapeutae as well, with their teacher. And so of course Christianity wants to claim that that must be Jesus and can't be any other Messiah, otherwise he'd be a false Messiah. But that's not how the system was set up. All of them were set up with the 12 apostles, therapeutae, in each city, and then there was a teacher. And the teachers became bishops, as they are later called. Linus was in Rome. James, the brother of Jesus, is said to have been in Jerusalem. And it's interesting that the Holy Roman Empire claims papal succession through Linus after Peter dies. And so here you have a situation where the therapeutae of the gospel narratives are killed off, murdered, and the Holy Roman Empire selects Linus, and it's actually Eusebius who's the propagandist for Constantine, who makes this designation so that it can be connected to Constantine, to justify Constantine creating Christianity with the Trinity and other things, the designation of the holy sites, which technically also involved his mother, or was that Muhammad? Muhammad definitely. I think Constantine also had mother involvements, but regardless, Constantine is responsible for creating Christianity. And the concept of Christ means anointed, and anointings are for kings. And so thus Jesus is said to be the one to restore the kingdom of David, because King David is a Christ. It's just the Greek word, whereas the Jews refer to it as Messiahs. with their Hebrew pronunciation instead of our English corrupted form of the word. As Moses is a Messiah, a king, and the leader of the church. But the Jews don't really call it a church, but they do believe in a congregation of Jews at a synagogue. But they're just different words. And so what the Gospels tells us is that James, the brother of Jesus, had prominence over Peter. Acts 15, starting in verse 13. And after they held their peace. Now this was about, he in verse 7, and when there had been much disputing, Peter rose up and said unto them, Men and brethren, ye know how that a good while ago God made choice among us that the Gentiles by my mouth should hear the word of the gospel and believe. So he's talking about preaching the gospel. And yet, after they held their peace, including Peter, James, the brother of Jesus, answered, saying, Men and brethren, hearken unto me. If you don't understand the culture and the purpose of the last person to speak, it means he has authority over all, and his final word is the final word. It's the decision that is to be implemented. And so after hearing everybody speak, he now makes his decision. He's the leader of the church. He's not an apostle. The other James, Peter, James, and John, that's a different James. James, the brother of Jesus, is the leader of the church. I don't think Christianity understands this, but my audience is Mormon or ex-Mormon. And we're talking about the keys that Russell M. Nelson is taking photos with to show Mormons he's the leader of the church. From the succession of Joseph Smith. As Brigham Young was in the equivalent of the Gospel's apostles. Joseph Smith was in the position of Jesus, and thus James, the brother of Jesus. Do you understand this? Brigham Young claims that because he became the president of the Quorum of the 12 by chasing away Thomas B. Marsh, and then later making the false claim that Hinckley and Monson and other presidents of the church have perpetuated, is that it had to do with the wife being evil and holding back milk scrapings. And then Thomas B. Marsh, being the loyal husband, chose her over the church, and that it was Joseph Smith who had him excommunicated. Kind of difficult to do when he's locked up in jail at the time it occurred. I don't know if you've heard those videos of me talking about it, but yeah, it wasn't Joseph who excommunicated him. So again, this is the Brighamite propaganda machine in operation, saying, oh no, it's all Joseph. Oh, it was him who did it. He doing it in secret, doing this, raping 14-year-old girls, wasn't a translator, blah, blah, blah. Brighamite Church. Liars and deceivers all. And so, if you don't know Joseph Smith's structure, the authoritative Quorum of 12, he called the High Council. They were the standing high council versus the traveling quorum of 12. He had them separated. And so, yes, Brigham Young, as the new president, whom Joseph Smith chastised him for booting out Thomas B. Marsh, calling him Judas, saying that he's trying to exalt himself to that position and exalt himself in the church. Then was arrested and then came back and again called the whole 12 Judas for exalting themselves. Joseph was not happy with the quorum of the 12 missionaries, specifically Brigham Young. But that was not put into Brigham Young's Doctrine and Covenants, was it? You can find it in the Joseph Smith Papers, though. But the church will not make any of that extra stuff canon. You have to pay $100 per book, but they won't make it canon. Especially removing section 132 and replacing it with the original 131 and the chapter on marriage. One woman, one man. So, what happened with the church then, with that Kirtland Temple, is that Joseph Smith received additional keys. Now he was receiving the latter day keys, the end of the world keys. Malachi talks about Elijah coming, a day that shall burn as an oven, and talks about the need for Elijah. The Jews understand Elijah and as coming back in spirit form, as he, in reality, as they talk about him, is actually the restoring king like Moses, their Messiah who they're looking for. But they sort of refer to him as more of a forerunner rather than the actual Messiah Moses. But yes, the Jews fully understand that a Messiah like Moses, and all Jewish rabbis, including the Rambam, the Jew of Jews, who talks about the Messiah coming, all agree that he must conform to Moses. He is to be like Moses. So when Joseph Smith, in section 103, verse 16, says a Mormon male will come who will be like Moses. That's what Joseph is referring to when the Book of Mormon says, hey, we're the learning of the pre-captivity Jews. We are not Christian. We are not whatever we are. We are not Brigham's heathen church. Pure evil, satanic church. And so that's what happened in 1923, is that they couldn't associate with Brigham Young and his church anymore. The United States was already on to them. They already destroyed them. And here they're now rebuilding with Lorenzo Snow's protection racket, turning tithing into a protection payments rather than giving to the poor, as Malachi tells us it's supposed to be for. And so they get themselves out of debt this way and keep it going rather than helping to pay for the poor. And so now they become more focused on money, money, money. And they have to come up with a different religion because they can't be like Brigham's anymore. And so they want to claim succession from Joseph Smith, but they have no clue what Joseph's religion was. All they have is the Book of Mormon, the first vision that Richards brought back with him, and I guess there was the revised church history by Willard Richards, which is why the church no longer publishes that, as they're now doing this Joseph Smith Papers cover-up. 131, or no, the name of the church is where I went, hey, wait a minute, Royal Skousen. What are you up to here? If the original document said the name of the church was the Church of Christ, leave it as written. Don't put in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and have a link that people have to know to click on, or refer to a footnote if it's in the book that way, to say that it was the Church of Christ. That's just pure evil. And so, if you don't understand the Pope and the lineage of popes from back to Linus, who replaced Peter, who is not the leader of the church, James, the brother of Jesus, is. But the Catholics manipulated the scripture, upon this rock I will build my church, and so they purposely buried Peter in a rock tomb below the church, then the Vatican. And so they are understanding that Peter had authority to run the church. So they sort of don't like this passage, and yeah, whatever. Oh yeah, James was just giving his opinion. And yet you don't see Peter's documents dominate the scriptures, let alone his gospel. He had a gospel. Where is it? Why isn't it not in canon? And so they don't really give too much authority to Peter, as they want Paul instead, because Paul hates women. At least the redactor of Paul hates women. If you don't know what a redactor is, he's somebody who comes later and makes changes to the original documents. You can identify them by the linguistic changes, and you can identify linguistics by the manner of speech. See, my manner of speech is completely different than all of you who are listening, all two of you. And so yeah, for some reason they wanted to push Paul when Paul was just among the regular apostles, of whom women were a part of. Junia, Romans 16. So yes, even this Jesus church had women with the priesthood offices. Try telling that to Oaks. Women will never have the priesthood. It is not God's plan. Oh? Right, because you speak for God, right? And so, like you said, that blacks will never have the priesthood. It's not God's plan. Okay. And so, the church, therefore, under Brigham Young, they believed that Brigham Young was Moses, because he believed that it was an exodus from America into the Salt Lake Valley, the mountains of Ephraim, the elders of Israel. O Babylon, we bid thee farewell, we're going to the mountains of Ephraim to dwell. And so, yeah, all his Danite buddies saying, yeah, we conquered the real Messiah, and now Brigham Young's the new Messiah. And so, yeah, that's what the Brighamite church understood, and that's why they were so evil. But the 1923 church had no clue about any of that. I don't understand why. Maybe because Joseph Fielding Smith was kept in the dark. because he'd had no clue. If you read his first presidency statement on Doctrine and Covenants, section 85, talking about the one mighty and strong, oh dear God, that was a humiliating embarrassment for him. But when you understand that Heber C. Kimball is the one who kidnapped his mother and him in order for them to be taken care of, you can understand why. He's not going to tell, oh yes, I murdered your father, and so now Brigham Young is the true Moses. Okay. But yeah, Joseph Smith clearly said a Mormon will rise up from the apostate church in the polluted inheritances in verse 14. And then there's other passages, section 1, verse 14 and 15. That's Mormons who have defiled the temple. And like I said, Brigham Young had nudity in the temple. Among the death penalties and the blood oaths and the revenge on America, which was not a revenge on America because he was the one who murdered Joseph Smith. They were just saying that was their justification. And so what you understand is that they were a part of the Illuminati, the inverted pentagram, and through the Scottish Rites Masons, which is what the Book of Mormon's warning us about. And their plans was to destroy America. So Brigham Young was perpetuating this. We're going to destroy America one day. And so it, somewhere along the line, by 1923, there was a cover-up. John DeLynn did an interview with a guy who talked about that cover-up not too long ago, a week or two ago. And that had to do with a couple of guys. Packer was one of them, I believe. And they were assigned to rewrite history and hide history that they didn't want known. And so what's happening now with the September 6th and others who are trying to find fault with the church, which is not hard to do, they were uncovering what the Brighamite organization was perpetuating. And so they are just trusting that, oh, they say Brigham Young raped a 14-year-old girl? Oh, that's horrible. How could Joseph do that? He didn't. They're trusting hearsay information. And when you get a whole bunch of Brighamites all supporting that, oh yeah, Brigham Young, oh yeah, way back in 1832, an angel appeared to Joseph Smith with a flaming sword and said, I'm going to strike you down instantly if you do not publicly practice polygamy. And so instantly, in the time frame of the angel, obviously was 12 years later. When people lie, they need to make sure that they sync with the actual history that will eventually come out and be exposed. And they didn't do that, but other historians are not checking that information as they should be, as they were trained to, I'm hoping. I did it. That's why I'm able to expose where nobody else is. But okay, wait a minute. I'm reading from Acts 15. James is now speaking, giving the final decision on the matter. Men and brethren, hearken unto me. Simeon, Peter, Simeon's different, isn't it? Because it's Simon Peter, and Simeon's different than Simon. Anyway, Simeon hath declared how God at the first did visit the Gentiles. So he's calling Jesus God. To take out of them a people for his name. Christ. We are all Christ's and Christas. And to this agree the words of the prophets as it is written. See, now he's trying to tie it into the prophets, to harmonize with the words of the prophets. And he says, after this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down. And I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. This is post 72 AD. Didn't Peter die before this? Didn't James die before this? Let's see if they give a... Come on. He died as a martyr, 62 or 69. Yeah. So I'm sure that the Catholic Church and Christianity believes that that's referring to his body. Because he's a real person, Travis. But he's Trinity. Well, yeah, that's what we meant. And so, yeah, this is interesting. This is an anachronism, is what it's called. It's written after the temple's destroyed, as they assume that it's the Temple of David, which is the Temple of Solomon. Interesting. Because he's referring to the passage where the Gospels claim Jesus was accused of treason, saying that this temple shall be destroyed, and in 3 days I will build it again. That's what he's referring to. Interesting. So yes, this is a latter-day prophecy, guys. Live. And 45 minutes into my video, as we're at 7 o'clock. I'll probably have time to make the video. I'll probably, well, we'll see. So, Pope means bishop. Not apostle, not 12 apostle, not the position of James or Jesus. Bishop. The leaders of the various therapeutae around the Middle East. Because if you were to go back and find out about the real Gospels church history, not the one your particular religion, if you're a Christian, are telling you, you would understand that all of these therapeutae churches were not one, but they were the same, and therefore the 12 apostles, therapeutae, would visit each of the different ones, and the teachers likewise would go around also, not necessarily with the 12. And just going around preaching and healing. And so when the Romans came down to try to destroy all these Jewish therapeutae, that's where you get the zealot Jews who want to take back Jerusalem from the Romans and rise up trying to establish the kingdom of David with the temple, just like the Maccabees did with the Greeks, and thus believed they had leaders who believed that they were the Messiah to restore the kingdom of David and the temple. And they all failed, obviously. Even the Jesus of the Gospels failed. That's why the Jews do not believe that Jesus of the Gospels is the Messiah, even though there are now Jews for Jesus. Nonetheless, Jews are still waiting for him to return. And so when Joseph Smith receives the keys of the gathering from Moses, nobody in the church references Jeremiah chapter 23. They apparently did not want, well, I wasn't a part of the triple. I was stuck with the Bible with that project. And so I hope that when we did Jeremiah that I referenced to section 103. I hope. I'd have to find my downloaded PDF text of the Spanish edition to verify if that was the case. Yeah, Jeremiah chapter 23 is what Joseph Smith is referring to in section 103, verse 16. And that's who the Jews are looking for, is Jeremiah 23, who will save the Jews. Jesus did not save the Jews. He's not a real person even. He's just a character attributed to a cultural setting, and as I'm doing here in Acts, this is an anachronism, as they're throwing it in here. And they're talking about Herod Agrippa, the grandson of Herod, but Herod died in 7 BCE, and yet Jesus is claimed by Mormons to be at 1 AD, April 6th. Yeah, no. There's some inconsistencies there, and you can't then adjust history to say, no, Herod was still alive, the scholars have got it wrong, and so you just move the timeline and everything fits. No, you can't do that. And so, no, Jesus was not born on the 6th of April. He was supposed to be born on a different day, but I've been trying to tell you guys this. Because now that we know he's Mormon and male, we now know that all the prophecies refer to him. And therefore, he must fulfill all the prophecies. Nelson doesn't. Nelson's not a true successor from Joseph Smith anyway. But it's not him. He's not going to do it. But Nelson claims to be in the office of Moses as the president of the church. Let's go over that. That is the key of the kingdom. Section 107, verse 91. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church, and to be like unto Moses, who gave Joseph Smith the keys of the gathering, whom a man like Moses is to be a part of the gathering and an exodus to Zion for the millennium. Place of refuge, city of peace, place of safety. I messed that up, but that's what safety, refuge, peace. And peace is Salem, and so New Jerusalem. And behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, verse 92, and a prophet. The current prophet, who claims that he's the president of the church, but does not claim that he has the keys of the office of Moses to be the president. Instead, he's claiming the keys of Peter, James, and John in order to justify being the president of the church. Section 124 tells Brigham Young and us that Brigham only had the keys of the kingdom to preach the gospel and set up churches. That's it. Not to rule. He was exalting himself. This is leadership of this church. The key of Moses, not the key of Peter. But the church won't tell you this. Because in 1923, they decided to go a different route because they didn't understand Joseph's organization. And they didn't want anything to do with Brigham's. No more brothels. No more nudity in the temple. And over time, the death penalty went away. I am old enough to know of the death penalty. You younger generation, it's being erased from church history. So now you guys, you go to the temple, I don't see anything about a knife being used to cut our throats for a penalty. Yeah, whenever you make a covenant, you're holding the knife in your hand. That's the sign. But Travis, you can't reveal the secret signs. Yeah, because it reveals their wickedness and abominations. Helaman chapter 6, verse 22. And so, yeah, this should horrify all Mormons, and it should shock and make ex-Mormons curious. What? I didn't know this. You mean Joseph's church was different? And we have no clue what it is? Would you like to know more? Starship Troopers. Oh man, hilarious. They have the part where a Joseph Smith branch of Mormonism goes to one planet that was forbidden by the Federation, and as a result of violating the rules of the Federation, that Joseph Smith encampment on another planet was destroyed by the bugs, if you're familiar with the movie series. Just hilarious. When I first saw the movie and that clip about Joseph Smith and came up, I was like, Joseph Smith? Oh wow, they went to another planet? They're dead! They all got slaughtered. You see them all. That was awesome. So, yeah, understand. Nelson is not a true prophet of God. When he says on Friday, I received revelation from heaven to tell you to have gratitude to cure coronavirus since my 2 previous fasts failed. You're supposed to be looking for a Mormon like Moses. What did Moses do during his coronavirus in Egypt, right before the Exodus? He told the house of Israel to stay home until it passes over. So I hope I made sense in this video, despite the halftime, around third quarter or first quarter interruption. But just like the Catholics and Christians who believe in papal succession, and of course there were schisms over time as you get Eastern Orthodox and Greek Orthodox and others that don't want to be a part of Catholics and the Vatican. As Henry the Eighth, I am, the one who wanted another wife and had to divorce his other wife, and the Pope said no, and so he said, well, you're gone then, I'm forming my own church. I guess that's the Church of England, is it? But yeah. So yeah, just like them. So when Brian David Mitchell changed his name purposely to be the Messiah, he can't do that. You can't just change your name. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have to let The prophecies dictate who this person is. You can't say, oh, I'm him. Oh, let's see, what am I supposed to do now? Well, Nelson should have done that for coronavirus. Let's see, we got a coronavirus. Is there something in scriptures where there's a viral pandemic that swept through the nation? Let's see. Oh, Moses. Oh, of course. What did Moses do? He could have done that. It would have been very simple and easy. Instead, no. He made a deal with Russia. Russia, if you're listening, a major city yet to be determined in Russia. Temple, remember? He's been doing Putin's bidding the whole time. And so, Trump, also doing Putin's bidding this whole time. Both of them. Wait a minute. John in Revelation talks about a beast, which is a king, and a false prophet. Outright calling him a false prophet. Huh. And they're both under the control of a dragon. Huh. Huh. So, yes. Prophecy dictates. And for some weird reason, it actually comes to pass. Very freaky. And so, yeah, you're now looking for somebody to restore the church and government. Because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is false, and America has collapsed. If you think that there's still hope to restore things under Biden, Biden said he had no interest in punishing Trump, and he said he had no interest in protecting us from the virus. Oh, I don't want to lock down America. I want to fight the virus. Yeah, you fight the virus by locking down America. You're going to have to destroy the economy, shut everything down. Church isn't going to receive money now. Uh-oh. The trillions aren't good enough, are they? Yeah, he clearly has exposed himself as having been extorted by the big corporations, and that's why he was made president. But they've got plans, because we just passed 30,000 on the stock market. They're building it up. So heads up. But yeah, Nelson only claims missionary authority. Apostle, not president of the church. They say he's the president, but only at the level of Peter, James, and John. Just like all who believe in the Pope claim that he's the leader of the whole church, when he only has authority as a bishop. That's what Pope means, bishop. So, yeah, everybody's claiming authority they don't have, with a title that shows they don't have that authority that they're claiming they have. So, alrighty, we'll see what I can get done tonight. If I have to upload it tomorrow, we'll do that.